Student housing is such a unique industry. The more unique an industry is, the more important it is for that industry to have a resource and a platform to share ideas and data, to determine best practices, and a platform to simply promote networking among the professionals in that industry. That's what we are setting out to provide with Student Housing Insight. But what's even more unique about the student housing industry is how unique those professionals are. They want to make a positive impact on the students and the university communities they serve. They understand they have an opportunity to touch the future. They come to work every day looking for ways to make that future bright. If you're one of those people, come be a part of Student Housing Insight. All right. Well, welcome to the first Shop Talk for 2026. I hope everyone had a great holiday season as well as a fantastic start to the new year. Would love to see your comments in the comment section, see where everyone is calling in or watching from today, I should say, and to make sure everybody can hear my voice as well. So feel free to put something in the comments, guys. All right. Today is Thursday, January 15th. Welcome to everybody that is joining us today. And want to just take care of a couple of introductory housekeeping things. Thanks so much for joining in. I appreciate everybody putting everything in the comments there. There we go. So if this is your first time joining Shop Talk, because I know there's a lot of folks that have registered for the first time this month, this is our monthly webinar for the industry that we produce at Student Housing Insight. I'm your host today, Wesley Dees. I'm also the CEO of Student Housing Insight. If you want to find out more about what Student Housing Insight is, we're a platform for networking. Also, we produce a lot of content on the industry. We have a podcast called Student Housing Insight, so you can go check out more about that at studenthousinginsight.com. Everybody's found the chat. We're going to have some great panelists on today as well, and would love for you to ask questions. So if you will, just put those in the chat, but put a Q in front of it just so it would be easy for me and my producer, Jan, to take a look for that. And that should be on the right-hand side of your screen if you're on your desktop. Go through really quick on a couple of just kind of outline the agenda for today. We're going to do policy and legislative updates from NMHC. So Dave will be joining us in just a moment. And then we've got some upcoming industry events that we're going to talk about, make sure is on everyone's radar. And then we've got the national and regional pre-leasing update with Charlie from College House and a couple of special operators that are going to be joining us today. So let's jump into it. Hey, Dave.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And we're not always used to seeing you in a tie today. It must be something special going on.
You know, you got to wear them once a year. So it's a reminder of actually how to tie a tie. So
there you go.
Wear them so infrequently. But no, I've actually, speaking of policy and legislative things going on, I am exiting the meeting a little bit early this afternoon because I've got a meeting over at the Treasury Department. So anyway,
that sounds fun.
A lot of beautiful building, a lot of activity here in Washington. A lot of housing is certainly front and center in a lot of different ways. Maybe not student, but certainly housing, home ownership, single family. A lot of that is certainly on a lot of people's minds right now. So I'm happy to jump in and give you guys a quick update. So when I talk about DC trying to address affordability, we haven't been on the screen for a little while. At the end of last year, we worked a lot with both the Senate and the House on two separate, pretty far-reaching housing bills. One was called the Road to Housing Act, called the Road, and the other one's called Housing for 21st Century, which is in the House. And one of the things that both houses don't like to do is just take legislation that one proposed versus the other. So, of course, they each have to come out with their own. However, having said that, they're both pretty far-reaching for, what is a slim margins in Congress. Some of the things got voted in with a significant amount of support on both sides. And so we're optimistic about kind of moving forward towards doing some things that are, let's call it, pro housing. And among those things that, you've also seen the president tweeting out some things this week that, again, are a little bit more single family focused. He's asked Fannie and Freddie to use $200 billion to lower interest rates. They haven't really bought anything yet, but the market reacted on a positive basis. And so you can actually get a single family mortgage less than 6%. Haven't seen that in a while. And
Yes.
so you've seen a bunch of refi activity, which really doesn't do anything for housing, to be perfectly blunt. You really need more people buying and selling. And on the same note, it doesn't help the commercial side. So it's not lowering interest rates for multifamily conventional, not lowering interest rates for student housing, et cetera. So, we're not getting a benefit out of some of the tweets that have come out recently. There is a meeting in Davos, Switzerland, which is kind of a big thinker, big doer type of meeting that happens every year. And the president is supposed to roll out some other housing related items, maybe 2 or 3. Why he's doing it there is unknown. It doesn't really impact people in Switzerland or people in Europe. But the bottom line is, I think there's a push and a focus right now. We are all about supply. So we got to build more student housing. We got to build more conventional things that just help people refi or whatever else, or in the existing loans that really help from a supply perspective. So, we put out a statement earlier this week to that end. It's like, you know what? Great, you're doing these things. You really need to be focused on supply, which is really going to help drive that. And if you look at kind of what's happened both on the conventional side and a little bit on the student housing side in terms of rent growth, et cetera, a lot of those things had moderated. And the reason they've moderated are, one, operational costs have been moderating, insurance costs have started to come down, a number of other factors, whether there's been delivery of new product that helps in terms of competition. Those are the types of things that help the messaging around new activity towards lowering the cost of housing for people across the United States. So the one other component that I think is certainly positive and is going to be positive for being able to finance student housing transactions as well as existing properties is that Fannie and Freddie had their production purchase caps for their multifamily groups increased by 20%. That's a pretty significant increase over the prior year. It's going to give them a lot more flexibility in terms of the purchases that they can make. And that's certainly going to be a benefit for the student housing industry. So, the industry, along with us, worked with FHFA in terms of giving them feedback and looking at, increase in demand for GSE debt, which is certainly going to be a plus. So we're certainly positive about that. So, there's other pieces of legislation that we've been working on that are all pro housing, multifamily directed, and which will certainly be net positive for the overall industry. Some good stuff going on, both on a legislative and a regulatory basis in terms of moving the ball forward that we think are going to be kind of a net positive for us and all of our members. Speaking of student housing, the Department of Education, and we've talked about this before, while it can't formally be demolished, even though the current administration would like to do that, it has to be an act of Congress and they're not going to vote on it. That doesn't mean you can't kind of effectively dismantle a department. And in many ways they have. There's 5 or 6 elements of what the department does, which have been shifted to other agencies. So whether it's, a loan program, it's been shifted over to Treasury because that's kind of more monetary in its focus. So things like that have been shifted out from responsibility under the Department of Education. And on the same note, this is a little bit more after the fact that existing loan programs have been tailored and reduced. So the number and types of loan programs are not as broad as what they had previously been providing. And then for existing loan programs, those who've already made loans, there was a fairly significant time frame during COVID where people didn't have to make their payments back, and so that part has been restarted, and there's going to be a lot more collections going on. This doesn't have anything to do with kind of existing or new clients into your properties, but it's something that I think people will look at in terms of accessing the financing for the department and what it's going to look like to repay them. Something we're monitoring. It's been the dismantling of the Department of Education has been a long-term goal of the Republican Party, prior administrations, et cetera. So I think this isn't not anything we didn't expect. It's just the question becomes what's going to be the access for students who are looking for loans. There's probably going to be a shift more towards private lending, right? And that's just going to be the how people are going to access capital. Last thing I'm going to mention is we have our annual meeting coming up in about a week and a half. We're going to be back in Las Vegas, and we have our Apartment Strategies Conference as part of that as well. And, we're running, registration is probably running a little bit ahead of what we have in the past. We'll end up over 8,000 people registered for annual, and probably about 2,400, 2,500 registered for the Apartment Strategies Conference. So we're optimistic. It's a good sign. A lot of interest, and it's a sprint to get ready for that. Rich can appreciate, getting ready for big conferences. It is always a lot of confusion, a lot of pressure to get things done, but I think we're in good shape.
Well, it's a perfect segue into our next segment, which is going to be on the upcoming industry events. I know that's the Strategies Conference is only 2 weeks away, along with the annual members meeting. I'm getting questions from some folks that are planning to join NMHC this year. My question from them to you is, are they able to, in the next week, join NMHC as a member and be able to be there for the members meeting?
Absolutely, 100%. In fact, we have every year we have people who walk into the conference and register as a new member at the conference.
Okay.
So it is not uncommon. I would suggest doing it ahead of time so you can get a attendee list, because it's a huge number of companies that are attending, and you got to figure out the best way to make good use of your time with that many people. It is a bit of an insane process when you have that many people wandering around one hotel.
I cannot stress enough how important it is that I think all of the student housing operators need to be members of NMHC. You guys are doing some important work, and that's what those membership dues go to. And you guys have been such of a great resource for us through COVID and everything else. And I'm sure we'll see more things coming in the future that we're going to have to lean on you guys for.
All right,
Rich, welcome. Dave, with that being said, unless if Rich has got any questions for what's going on in Capitol Hill, and I'll give him that second to.
I'll just say good luck in Vegas. I'm sure it'll be an awesome event, as it always is.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Dave. We'll see you soon.
All right. Take care.
Oh, lost Rich. There we go.
Oh.
Sorry about that. I started getting the emails last month. First of all, great conference, LeaseCon, TurnCon here in Charlotte last month. It was, I've heard so much good feedback from it, and are looking forward to the next one. Before we start talking about Interface coming up in March, just a few more months, any recap from LeaseCon, TurnCon that you want to mention to everybody?
Yeah, it's hard to believe it was only 5 weeks ago, right? Seems a lot longer with the holidays and everything in the middle. LeaseCon, TurnCon was great. Obviously, the leasing environment a little different than it's been, but that's not really a bad thing. It's just kind of more of a return to the norm. But I thought the content was really strong, and it gave people really good strategies about what they should be thinking about in terms of crafting their leasing strategy for this year. A lot of good discussion on various marketing techniques, be they social, be they digital. AI certainly part of the discussion, and then some good focus on turn as well. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. Great to be in your city of Charlotte, and appreciate everyone being there.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I got. I don't. I may even got my first email about interface in Austin coming up before LeaseCon TurnCon, but definitely by the next week I was getting them, and have already locked in my my room at the JW because those go pretty fast. But you've got another deadline coming up. I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of, and then if you've got some, I saw some of the first speakers being announced this past week, so would love to hear what you've got on tap.
Thanks, Wes. Yeah, we are hard at work on interface student housing. The event is as early this year as it's been in a long time. Not our doing, just kind of what the hotel offers us. So it's Monday, March 30, Tuesday, March 31, and then ending on Wednesday, April 1. And that's no April Fool's joke. So yeah, early start for us, which means, we got to be working on everything earlier than normal, but that's all good. So we're hard at work. The interest has been great from companies wanting to be involved as sponsors and exhibitors. Attendance is great so far. The deadline you referenced is our early bird registration rate discount, ends on February 5th. So that's 3 weeks away. It does save you, I think it's about $160. So pretty good savings. And just for anyone out there who's not familiar with the event, we start on Monday early afternoon, which I realize some people will probably need to come in on Sunday, which I know it stinks to give up your weekend a little bit, but I can tell you, if you do come in on Sunday, you will not be alone. There will be a lot of people at the event. We'll probably have at least 400 hotel rooms at the JW booked on Sunday night. So then Monday afternoon, all day Tuesday, and then we have some of our best sessions on Wednesday morning. So don't book an 8 a.m. or a 9 a.m. flight, book a noon or a 1 or a 2 p.m. flight so you can check out some of the stuff on Wednesday.
Yeah, definitely that. And then I got to get with you and kind of finish up the plans, but we'll be doing our operators, we'll be doing what has now become our annual brunch to kick things off. And looking forward to seeing everybody for that. So that'll be on Monday. If we stick to, if everything it works out the way it has in the past, it'll probably start at about 10:30 on Monday morning, and we'll be doing a live podcast as well. So look for details on that to come. But Rich, anything else before I bring Charlie up? I guess I will bring Charlie up.
I was just going to mention also the Innovator Awards. These are our awards celebrating excellence in student housing, both off campus and on. The Innovator Awards will again be presented at Interface Student Housing, but the deadline for entry is February 13th, so about a month from today. We are sending out promos on that. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me or Randy Sheeran or Tim Tolton. But again, encourage companies to enter the Innovator Awards. It's a lot of fun. It's a great process, and it really celebrates some amazing projects. So that's it for me, and I'll turn it back over to you and to Charlie.
Well, great. I appreciate it, Rich. Charlie, any thoughts on Interface before we let Rich go?
Yeah, Rich, have you changed the dress code yet to be more Charlie friendly?
If anything, Charlie, we may go the other way. We may require ties and suits.
Ooh, we'll see. Put me as a maybe then.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, Rich, take care.
We don't want attendance to plummet. It'll be Blazers will still rule the day.
There you go.
All right, Rich. Well, I appreciate it, and we'll see you next month. And again, reminder to everybody: make sure that you take advantage of that early bird special by February 5th, just coming up in a couple weeks. All right.
Thank you, Wes.
Well, take care. Charlie, I wanted to bring you on for this because I think these guys did one in Atlanta last year that maybe you attended. Maybe you've got some feedback on it, but a few more events. Student Housing Insight we've got a cooperative agreement with BISNOW. They've been doing a student housing conference in Philly for years that kind of served that I-95 corridor between the Carolinas and Boston. And, it's just a quick one-day fly in, fly out. They've changed things up, and now they're doing across the country a lot of local summits. And so they've announced their first three. One is the Philadelphia Educational Real Estate Conference. And they do have some stuff on student housing, but just so everyone knows, they're also talking about K through 12 infrastructure and things like that. So if you're thinking it's going to be all student housing, I think they've only got one session that's actually on student housing. But and then they've got one coming up this spring in April in San Francisco, and then one in San Diego in May as well. Anybody that wants to go and would like to get a discount, these are fairly inexpensive. They're not even, I wouldn't even call them a whole day conference. They usually start at 8 o'clock and they're over by 3 o'clock. And so they're not very expensive, but they have offered to our Shop Talk audience a code to get 20% off. So you can use ShopTalk20 to get 20% off. And looking forward to seeing everybody there. Charlie, did you go to one of these last year?
There was one in Atlanta. I didn't go. Schedules didn't align, but I know people did. And ultimately, between NMHC and Interface and LeaseCon, there's probably only 3 conferences other than kind of the operator specific ones. So it's nice to see there's other opportunities for people outside of just those 3.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's time for our Fall 26 pre-leasing national and regional review. Before I bring the operators up that are joining us today, I figure we go ahead and go through your data and see how things ended up for the end of December and into first couple weeks of January.
Absolutely. So all this is as of, I guess, the Friday, the 9th. We pulled it all together on the 12th. Snapshots come from the 9th, 10th, if you will. From a national perspective, coming off of the holiday break, there wasn't much of a change, nothing needle moving from beginning of December to beginning of January. About 42.7% across the nation, about 1.9% behind. That's fluctuated from 1.1 to 2.8 over the last handful of months. Nothing truly groundbreaking here other than the fact that I think, as it is every year, very market specific on what's ahead, what's behind. A lot of the supply that's coming in is very concentrated as you look across the US and as you look at certain markets, which could be, attributing, especially Southwest and Southeast, where the vast majority of those are. Obviously, the West Coast gets a later jump, so take that with a grain of salt if you're new to looking at these metrics. Across the board, you're seeing supply demand really take over. A lot of these markets have seen, whether it was a shock last year or a shock this year, again, very market centric as you look there. But the Southeast, which houses the vast majority, or probably about 40% of the beds that we're looking at here across these 4 regions, roughly about 3.3% behind. Again, nothing to really run home about. We're still early in the cycle, but ultimately, slightly behind of last year, where ultimately I think we ended up just under 92%, give or take. So still strong from a fundamentals perspective. Again, I mentioned supply. It's only about 35,000 beds being delivered this year. That's been pretty consistent the last 5 years, give or take. But if you look at kind of pre-COVID levels, you're down 30+% as an aggregate for those previous 5 years of 2014 to 2019 versus 2020 to present era. So definitely still strong, in seeing, very, very market specific constraints, but ultimately, again, 2% behind, nothing crazy at this current moment.
Let's talk about rental rates.
Yeah, I'd say everything, generally speaking, is pretty, I would say tempered. We're every time I say this, you have to, kind of give the caveat of 22, 23 leasing cycle, where things were double digits across the board. But, ultimately you're seeing definitely some more consistent levels on the rental rate side. As groups look at their tiers in different times of the year, you're definitely seeing those where there is a slowing of velocity react. But, in a lot of markets, there's a number of markets here that are, in the high 80s from a pre-leasing perspective, where there has been a lot of new supply, or there's been a huge enrollment spike, and you just don't have those, the number of beds to really facilitate those students coming into that off-campus market. But, I'd say, first time we've seen on the Midwest side being over $1,000 a bed on average. And then, the Southeast is creeping up there too. But, Southwest, a lot of your Texas markets where, ultimately some of those tertiary markets are a little bit lower from a rate per bed perspective. But nothing really jumps off the page too much for me when I look at it nationally.
Remind me where we, for fall move-in year over year, what numbers did you guys end up reporting as far as the year over year on
the move-in? It was somewhere between 2.7 and 3.2. So really in that kind of average, call it 3%, relatively speaking.
And this
Yeah.
3.7 that we're seeing now, that's literally year over year from where you were reporting rates last year, not from where things ended.
Maybe a day or two different, just based on the fact of the calendar. It's not going to be the 9th of January or the 12th, if you will. So
Right.
same 3 or 4 day window. So yeah, so everything, from a year over year perspective that we're reporting is spot from that same week, plus or minus a few days. But yeah, so I mean, last year, you were, I think, 990 something, or just over $1,000 or something like that.
Yeah, I want to say we ended up end of September. I think that number was like 1,004, 1,003, something like that, if I remember correctly. So
yeah, I can't find the actual number on my handy phone here, but
yeah, you can look it up.
anyway, from what was reported at LeaseCon, just for context here for people, let's see. Yeah, we were sitting at beginning of December, or I guess end of November, we were at 35.4% on the pre-leasing side, about 1.2% behind. And then the rate was 102.8 and about 3.8% ahead year over year, or rent growth year over year. So, jumped up about $6 in that same time frame throughout the holiday.
Gotcha.
And then from a floor plan perspective, I guess this chart highlights maybe, I'd say, two things. Obviously, your larger unit types, we see this leasing up more now than everybody's normally got a studio 1 or 2 sitting towards the end of the leasing cycle. But with the 4 bedrooms being kind of the largest number of the most common floor plan, given the density in student housing, 1.5% behind, relatively, plus or minus in line, depending on the week there. The 5s, I know that looks like a drastic difference there, 3.6%. There's not a whole lot of 5s, not a whole lot of 6s, just given that's more of a unique floor plan type and more attributed to your cottage product or newer inventory. But the studios, as we go to the next chart here, being 3.1% behind, they are still a premium to I guess, a 1 bedroom. Studios, again, a relatively newer inventory. You can attribute those to, but you're still seeing, about call it a $30 difference between the two from a average rate nationally, where if the resident can find a friend, they can save a sizable amount of money going down to the larger unit types, specifically from the 1 to the 2. You're almost looking at like $450 there, $463. There's my math, just for that, I guess, getting the larger unit type and split the difference there. But
yeah.
3s, 4s, 5s, again, everything moving kind of generally speaking in a, more of a tempered rent growth kind of profile here. But you're looking at the 6 bedrooms. Again, there's not a lot of them, and those are the least renewed. So a lot of those are getting actually put out into the market, which you're seeing more of a market rate. So that 7.5% needs some context, given the fact that it's the least renewed type floor plan in student housing. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a lot of consistency. Again, return kind of to your, the occupancy side. I think some markets where there is that supply demand imbalance, there is some upward mobility, but a lot of this is a little harder these days. Given the fact of the run up over the last 5 years.
Question just on the floor plan rates, because we're seeing more and more supply coming into the California markets. I'm noticing most of those have some level of dual occupancy in the bedroom. How much of that how does that weigh into these calculations on a per bed basis?
Yeah, so we're gonna set Berkeley in a little bubble right here, and then we're gonna talk about everything else kind of from a dual occupancy. If it's a pure, it's a pure double. Hey, I guess 2 bedrooms, 2 beds in each. We'll show what the actual double rate is. Where it gets very, very tricky, and why I say Berkeley is because a lot of times you might have like a 4 bedroom where there might be 1 private unit, 1 double.
I have to go ahead and bring Brenna in because I know she's got comments on Berkeley.
Yeah, and it's all Brenna's fault, just so everybody's clear. But it's a little more challenging where there's like various layouts that it could potentially be, like a 4 bedroom that's furnished for 7 but can have up to 11. That'll be more the private rate on that front. But if it's a pure double, it will just show up as whatever the quoted market rent is for that.
So, Brenda, any comments on this dual occupancy stuff that we see pretty prevalent?
Yeah,
in the West Coast?
I mean, laughing. I'm Wes. I know you could see me backstage laughing because this is one of our most challenging markets in our entire portfolio. And to Charlie's point, it's almost impossible to track what's happening with our competitors as it relates to ourselves on floor plans, just because everybody does it a little bit differently, right? You might have something set up and that houses 8 people, but they could actually put 12 in there. So, yeah, from a rate and leasing standpoint, it's really, really hard to track And then on top of that, you also have the multifamily aspect. So yeah, it is just, it's difficult in Berkeley. Times are tough in Berkeley.
Well, hey, this is I think it's probably a good transition for us to introduce Brenna and Dan. But Charlie, any other final thoughts on the data from this past?
No, I think, one of the things we kind of chat about, like the one trend that I'm really seeing, and this was consistent last year too, and I think I did speak about it pretty intently, but you're definitely seeing from a leasing, like a product type, you kind of have the first half, you have a student renter pool where they're I would say sight unseen, but more open to signing for those more premium floor plans at the higher price points, at some of the more pedestrian assets, where ultimately, especially even over the last 2 weeks, we've seen a lot of lower velocity on those premium floor plans. And again, the floodgates have opened as it relates to more of your non-pedestrian inventory. So whether it's half mile out or further, the second semester leasing really is favoring those more affordable properties a little further from campus, where more selective from a velocity standpoint as it relates to leases. And I see some nodding heads, which makes me feel good. So
yeah, we're definitely going to get into that
groundbreaking trend where last year, especially on a lot of these more premium properties, again, regardless of market, it was to use Dan's word, it's a dogfight there from those leases as it relates to that second half of the school year. It's my only little nugget that I got.
Well, great. Well, let's meet our operators that are joining us for this month. Brenna, you are no stranger to Shop Talk, but Dan, I think this might be your first time on. You've certainly been on the podcast, but I think this is your first time on the webinar, and you've actually back in August joined our Shop Talk Leadership Committee. So thank you for serving there and making this content great. But let's do some proper intros, Brenna.
I thought you were going to go with Dan first. So, hi guys. My name is Brenna Tucson. I'm the Senior Vice President of Sales and Training for Article Student Living. At Article, I lead our national leasing and revenue strategy, oversee sales, training, and support performance across our entire portfolio. And then I also serve as the executive sponsor for our 3 culture committees that we have here at Article. At Article, our portfolio is a little over 22,000 beds across 31 markets and about 50 assets.
Great. Dan?
Yeah, Wes, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. And yeah, my name is Dan Chope. I'm the president of CLS Living. And so I oversee all the operations and everything related to the company. As far as CLS goes, we're in 37 markets. We have 55 properties, and we're a little over 30,000 beds right now that we are operating.
Well, fantastic. Well, I think it might be just a good opportunity to talk about what everybody's going to be doing for Martin Luther King Day. And we've got a football championship that's coming up. Charlie, I'm sorry, your Bulldogs are not in it this year.
Yep, can't win every year.
And Brenna, Article's got a great property in Bloomington from what I remember. Are you guys throwing a party there this year, or what's the plan?
So for everybody on this call that doesn't know, they continue to stab me in the heart with these Oregon references because I am an Oregon Duck diehard football fan. And so Wes just keeps hitting me with the fact that we clearly got our butts kicked at the game in Atlanta last week, which I was there front and center. So I hope this is the last one, Wes, because it's killing me.
No, congrats to Indiana and Miami. It's been fantastic watching it, but would love to see in the comments who Aaron. Okay, great.
Of course.
I'll wait to read the comments later.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's there you go, Deshaun. All right, let's get into some questions. So we kind of touched on it a little bit in our prelim call, but I've had a lot of discussions with operators this year that seem to really be prioritizing occupancy over rate increases. And, with the pre-leasing gap that we talked about as well, I just wanted to put this question in front of you guys, which is, how are you balancing with occupancy while maintaining above 90%? Rate with occupancy while maintaining above 90%. So who wants to jump on that first?
I'll start if you want. So, I think, Wes, we look at it as the same. Like, we treat rate, occupancy, and rate not as opposing goals, but together. You kind of look at it that way, especially in softer pre-leasing markets. We're seeing this being an issue. So in markets where you see rates that had leasing turmoil last spring and summer, students are actually slower to renew and sign. We're seeing that across our portfolio. And some of the things we're seeing is even like through parent group chats. I don't know if you can track those, but we get on some of those and we kind of take a look at what the parents are saying. And a lot of them are talking about encouraging looking at alternative housing and looking at such thing as, I think Brenna mentioned, like multifamily and conventional housing, and just looking for better deals overall. So we're definitely seeing that. But to me, with the data transparency right now being at an all-time low and trying to, figure out where everyone's at, what we look at is, our own ways to kind of do that. So we're looking at our own web scraping tools, which we've created. I'm sure a lot of companies, Brenda's nodding her head, I think, a lot of companies are going to that now, trying to figure out from an occupancy standpoint where people are at. It's hard. So you have to look at rate. You take a look and look, what are their rates at? Are they moving their rate? Is the needle moving at all? And then you try to make decisions off of that as you're seeing your own velocity and what you're hearing out there, kind of try to figure that out. But the markets are swinging. And when they do, you have to try to get in front of it. So you're trying to avoid the rate wars as much as possible.
Yeah. I mean, Dan, you and I are very much aligned on this. I mean, it's not rate or occupancy. It really is a disciplined blend of both. In order to maintain a 90% plus occupancy while still protecting rate, it's really being hyper focused on pace in real time. So, we are constantly doing everything Dan said as it relates to trying to figure out ways that we could figure out how our competitors are performing. And like Dan said, are they dropping rates? Are they increasing specials? That is kind of an indicator that maybe your 4 bedrooms aren't doing well. But yeah, we make adjustments in real time. We're watching this stuff constantly, and we're making adjustments in real time and often. I know I told the group yesterday, but we've made like so many hundreds of adjustments across our entire portfolio, starting even in September of last year after we launched leasing, just based on what we were seeing with our own performance, but also compared to what our competitors were doing.
And I think everyone's cautious. They want to preserve that rate, right? You don't want to give it up, but you have to respond quickly, when things are reacting. And so that's the game you're playing. And that's what we're looking at. To Brenna's point, we're looking at it daily. You're looking at rates and you're looking at what everyone's doing on a daily basis. And you're not waiting to make decisions. You're trying to, act in real time.
Totally. And in addition to that, when we're looking at, rate reductions or increased concessions, we're looking at, okay, well, can we get to a higher occupancy than we originally budgeted so we can make up that revenue? So, we're constantly changing our projections, our models, because we know that if we hold fast on some of these rates and some of these specials, we're not going to get there.
Right. Are you guys, I also want to just think about ancillary revenue and how that plays into that as well. Are you guys looking at, when you're making those adjustments, are you looking just at the rental rate and, the cold water rate as we refer to it sometimes, or are you guys taking a really hard look this year at the ancillary revenue, the parking and things like that?
Yeah, we look at it. We have a whole strategy on fees itself and how you do it, pre-launch to your rates coming in. And we look at it in the summer before we launch everything in, August, September. And, you get to a point where it's like, how many fees can you get? Are you feeing them to death to a point where, they're starting to push back on those? And your competitors, you're trying to see what your competitors are doing compared to what you, and we do a whole analysis of trying to figure out where our fees are at compared to what our competitors are doing. But it's still a game. Every time you add another fee, to me, it's like a rental rate increase anyway to the resident. So it's just how you're pitching it and how you're doing it. So you're trying to play that game a little bit of what you can get away with in certain markets as compared to pushing rate. So sometimes we've actually not done that and just pushed the rate a little bit. But in other markets, you've added those fees wherever you can. So yes, to your question, we look at that, often. Yeah.
Charlie, are you on the College House platform? Are you guys tracking much on those other ancillary fees as well, or?
I feel like everybody and their brothers drops an app fee to get some interest there. But on things that really like the higher ticket items like parking, generally speaking, is kind of the key one for us. I think what's an interesting trend, especially as it's becoming harder and harder to develop, is that those parking spaces becoming, again, another supply and demand type issue. I know in some markets it's much more challenging, but especially like I see in Atlanta, like they're dropping some of the parking requirements so they can get the housing that they need, but at the same time, it's become a little bit more challenging on the leasing side.
It's going to be interesting. Did you see the news in Clemson that they pushed out back in the fall? Freshmen can no longer have parking on campus. So
yeah. So, and that's the thing. It's like, the parcels of land that are there, it's a little harder unless you have some, underserved acreage, which I doubt many people do, to add more parking. But I know that there's a lot of challenges related to just getting spaces for those being, whatever it's 0.8 for every bed parked or whatever it ends up being, is kind of like the rule of thumb. 0.9, I think. I've seen a handful of those actually go up because there is just a scarcity, and parents like, hey, cool the rate, but like if little Sally can't park there, then we got a little bit of an issue. So moves the needle.
Yeah, sorry, Charlie. I think you're also seeing, Wes, is the transparency with fees, because if you're not listing it, you're not showing it, on that first page, people feel like they're being duped. And that's the one thing you don't want to have happen. And so you're trying to be upfront with what those fees are and not try to have all those hidden fees, kind of snuck in there, because that does hurt you down the road in a lot of ways.
Yeah. That's a big question across a lot of different sectors, not just student, but the only other thing I've seen that's kind of, I guess, if you think about things that are included or whatnot, is like not a lot of cable is being added, in a lot of instances even taken away when people are doing these renovations. Because the amount of streaming services that these kids have. So there's
you're better served putting that taking that money and expanding your bent.
And we've actually debulked, we debulked in a lot of places as the contracts are coming up, because it's not as popular anymore, to what Charlie was saying.
Yeah. Hey, I want to get this next question. At LeaseCon, DuringCon, there was some discussion on this, and we talked about it on our prelim as well. But Class A properties, that most of them being pedestrian, a lot of them built within the past 5 to 8 years. A little bit more of an affluent student, so to speak, that's renting those, and they seem to be holding out a little bit longer this year. I just wanted to ask you guys this question: what are your key leasing strategies for Class A properties in this current market?
I'm happy to take that to start. So most of our portfolio at Article are Class A properties. Our strategy goes just beyond lease earlier. I feel like I continue to hear people like, we launched even earlier this year, we launched earlier than we have, year over year. And it does. It keeps getting earlier and earlier. I mean, we're the same. We launched a couple weeks earlier than we ever have, and we're typically one of the first to roll out. But it's not just leasing earlier, that is a part of it, but it's also focusing on justifying value for the student and the renter. I mean, if we look at today's student and parent, they are very, like you said, Wes, they're very cost sensitive. They're more deliberate about where they're renting. I mean, they are shopping everything. It's not just like, well, I know that I can afford, top tier Class A properties, or, I know I can't. I mean, they're shopping everything because they want to understand it's not just about the unit interiors and the amenities. It really is, what is the lifestyle like? What kind of academic support is my student going to get? So these are all the things that we like to showcase when it comes to justifying value. I mean, we look at our renewal strategy. It's built to create urgency, but also reinforce that value early in the cycle for not just our current residents, but also for our new ones as well. And then just one last thing I'll say, because I know we talked about this on our pre-call, is that one of our strongest correlations we are seeing between increased leasing velocity or maintaining to how we performed last year is really in customer service. I mean, if we look at our prospect scores, if we look at our current resident survey scores, I mean, there is a direct correlation with the increase in those and the increase in our leasing velocity. The takeaway from that is that great customer service isn't just a nice to have, and it's a revenue driver.
Yeah, I think Brenna hit it very correctly on that one. So, I mean, because they are waiting. I mean, students and even to parents to some degree, they're taking longer to decide. They're taking longer. And Brenna mentioned it. It's price awareness. I mean, in Charlie's, graph, you're seeing, especially in the Class A, you have a lot of studios, you have ones and those kinds of units, and the rents are being pushed. You're pushing in, they're at a higher amount. And so there's more sensitivity to the price awareness of what those rates are. And so they are taking a little bit longer. And we also look at it as you can market to all those, but you still can't get away from the core marketing efforts on these Class A properties because everyone has the same amenities. They all have the rooftop pools now, and they all have all the fancy amenities. It's what are your marketing efforts that go into it that go along with your customer service aspect that you do, because you can't just rely on digital marketing all the time anymore. In our opinion, like we need to go out and still put the grassroots kind of marketing, hitting the pavement, hitting the campus, doing those kinds of things to kind of build awareness even before you launch the season. And so Brenna's point of quality of service and customer service is the exact approach that we take, because we look at it as it's a standard. It's not a maybe kind of thing. We focus on customer service. We have a complete, department that is focused on hospitality, especially training your employees the right way to do it, and doing the follow-up and all that. Especially with all the AI now, you lose some of that component of interaction, but it's still important because you're still having maintenance guys ain't going into units and they're still interacting with your residents. So you have to still have that area of customer service. It's key. So Class A leasing, to me, it's less about being the cheapest at this point. It's how you differentiate yourself from everyone else with the amenities and stuff that you're offering and the customer service.
I'm glad you said that, because as you were talking, and I was thinking about how you would answer this, and just thinking about the portfolios, and you guys do a lot of third party at CLS, and of course Vesper, kind of being the main client, the parent company, and there's been there's definitely been properties that you guys have acquired that were not A class, but when I've walked into them after yourself and Jessica Nix and the team there,
yes,
everybody talks about value add, and I could definitely say they've spent money, but I've gone in after you guys have taken over, and it has a completely different feel about it. So there's my commercial for CLS Living today.
Well, thank you.
Well, I just want to say, I love that you said that, because, we've had a couple acquisitions and they're not aligned with our typical portfolio, what we typically develop. And to your point, the teams, you walk in there and you would think that they are managing the Taj Mahal of student housing. The way that they treat the residents, and you can tell, the way that people respond to them, both in our current residents and prospects, and the way that they, provide feedback. It's just like, these are the most amazing, hospitable people that I've ever met. And they make me feel so comfortable and so warm. And I want nothing but to live here.
And
articles had,
oh, go ahead, Wes. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to expand on that. I'll follow up with Brent on my question.
Yeah, I would say, we also look at, because what type of resident you have that are leasing at these types of units and properties, because, we invest in trying to identify the type of resident, where are they coming from, and what is making them choose you. So looking at that and really helps you understand then, like, how do you go attack them on the marketing side? So it's important to kind of understand that. It's hard to kind of get that information, but there's ways to do it. It's just, you have to invest in that to understand where your residents are truly coming from.
Yeah.
So I do want to follow up on the acquisition discussion a little bit, because Brennan, you guys had some key acquisitions last year, and the team that's at Article, came from a different group, and there was a lot of new dev from that standpoint. Just kind of curious, what is it that, and for both of you guys, what is it that you guys are looking for today when you're looking for an acquisition, and not just the tangible with the, with the property, but with the team that's on site? Because we've got a lot of property managers here. They may end up having folks visit their property, in the coming year. Maybe some of you guys will end up being there visiting with them. What is it that you're looking for when you want to say, hey, is this somebody we want to keep on the new team?
It really is. Do they align with article values? If we look at how we operate as a company, it's a property management group. We want to make sure that these individuals align with article values. When we acquired, when we acquired Lexington last year, the team did go because they went with the other company. So we actually had to interview quite a few individuals inside and outside of the market internally. And I mean, we built that team from the ground up just because that's what we knew we needed to do in order to, like I said, align with the article values, but also in order to be successful there. I mean, it's 1,100 beds in a market we've never been in. Those were some fundamentals that were really important to us.
Yeah. And I think it's looking at, we spend a lot of time looking at, are they the right fit for that property? It's not just like they're a warm body, they're the next person that you bring in. So it's like, what does this property need? What kind of leader does this property need? And what kind of staff does it need? And so we do spend a lot of time intentionally just trying to find out the right fit for that property. And so, but when you're looking at staff, Brenna says the same thing. They have to fit your core values. They have to fit of what you're looking for as a company. And so we've, taken on acquisitions, and you hope to keep the staff as much as possible if you don't have people ready to come in.
Yeah.
But what you do is you're looking at them, you're evaluating it, and we know we're not for everybody, and we admit that going in. And so, but we try to tell
Dan. Same.
But this is our expectation. This is our expectation of you, because when we take over properties, they may be used to not having the oversight that they have or the support that they're getting. So trying to understand that difference and explaining that to them up front goes a long way with basically telling them what they can expect after, coming to work for us.
Well,
I'll even take that a step further and just say, we had an entire home office team. I mean, I was in Lexington for a month. I mean, we had an entire home office team because we also want to show them, like, front and center, this is also how we operate. This is also what it means to be a team member at Article, rather than just saying, here are all the things that you need to make sure that you're doing on a daily basis and act as an Article employee.
Yeah.
So I think that also creates a lot of buy-in.
Well, Charlie, I know you've got your ear close to, kind of the happenings and things. You have any predictions on what acquisitions are going to look like maybe over the next 2 quarters? Think we'll see a lot of them?
You'd get I'm not a broker, so you might actually give you
the truth.
I love them though. I'm kidding. But I'd say, what I've seen is, I think last year volume was way better than the previous year. I think the capital that was in student housing is a little more long-term holders, and they're more so underwriting the university, where like in Tempe, Arizona, is it flying off the charts? No, but it's not like Arizona State's going anywhere, and that enrollment is going to dip and everything in between. So I think you're seeing a little bit more recap activity in these operators. And like, I know Dan, and talking with Vesper guys, like a lot of recaps that are happening, and, different business plans and everything in between. We're ultimately, I think I was on a panel actually with Mr. Andrew Layton. If anybody knows him, he's like, these universities aren't moving. Like the University of Georgia, the University of Oregon, not going anywhere. And, if you've got a main location, at the end of the day, like it's very safe from a place to put your money. So I think, these trophy assets that are built one-off, that, the bigger groups are going to get bigger. But, at the end of the day, I still think you're going to see a lot of pure acquisitions that are on the market. Some might be a little bit more tedious and, might require a little more capital if it's a value add or anything in between. But, from the people I talk to, they're super bullish on it. It's just trying to find something that either pencils from an acquisition standpoint that's not bid up too aggressively, and then also they can get behind. I mean, you talk to every investment group, we buy tier one, we buy core plus properties in tier one markets across the US. It's like, yes, so is everyone else. But at the same time, it's the way you create that alpha is just what both of them are talking about. They say, yeah, market's good. The staff is great. That's the second thing they say when they're talking about, when I'm talking to groups about acquisitions or properties, and, it's a plug and play, and the manager's been in the market for XYZ, knows all the, so it matters. And I also think that you just, especially where, unless interest rates go down another 100 basis points, I don't think you're going to see that big of a feeding frenzy like you saw back in like 22, 23.
So I want to talk about this really quick. We had in our prelim call a discussion about, some of the markets that aren't doing as well, and those markets will remain unnamed. But I wanted to throw this question out to you guys. What specific non-supply related external factors are you seeing in those markets, and what hyper local strategies are necessary to navigate those unique market downturns?
Yeah, I'll start if you want. Yeah. So, I think we're seeing a few things. There's always in some markets or universities enrollment. You see enrollment softness still being a factor out there, especially among the out of state and international students, where it's a heavy impact in those universities. You have the visa issue that you're dealing with the pipeline and all that kind of stuff for people coming over. So there's also the higher costs. Higher cost of tuition. That's a factor to some things, which is in effect is hindering their decision on where they want to live, because you weigh all that together, your cost of education plus your cost of housing. And then you also, where you still look at the shadow market a little bit and what's going on with that. And one of the things that we're seeing as well is, there is a shift sometimes in some markets toward commuter behavior as families are trying to control expenses. They're trying to do that. So you still have commuters that you're dealing with. So, and then for us, some of what we're seeing also, you have potential housing policy changes with universities. So they changed their policies on that, which is affecting your approach and how you're going to market. We know last year or the year before, financial aid was an issue, right? That was a big issue that they're trying to overcome. And so you never know what's going to happen from year to year. So what we do is you have to look at it as operationally expanding into different areas and looking at different ways to kind of attract students. So do you target more young professionals in some places where you need to? Do you look at partnering with the athletic programs? We try to do that, on some properties to get, can you get a small master lease from this group to kind of help you out? But there's a lot of things. So to me, it's not a one size fits all solution to every market. They're all unique. So you have to tailor your marketing plan, like it's its own little business plan for each little market now.
I mean, we're doing the same. I think, just one thing I will say, like Dan said, is that it's really important to be flexible on all things, right? I mean, if you apply a one size fits all strategy, not just with what you're doing across your entire portfolio, but with, what you did last year. I mean, we're constantly telling our property teams, like, it might've worked last year, it might not work this year, so it's really important to do, everything that Dan said, just keep engaged with, partnerships with the university, alignment with international student offices, target outreach by majors. Like, it's just, there's so many things that you just need to keep a very close pulse on in order to make sure that you are being successful.
Yeah, in some of our tier 2 markets, I'm looking at, you're going back to the basics of 100%. Student housing 101 tactics, and teaching them about purpose-built housing. They don't understand it. And so sometimes you're having to do that as well.
I remember when I was out slinging pizzas at University of Oregon, like trying to get leases. I mean, hey, I'm not above it. Might be back out there.
You're right.
Well, guys, I had a great question on AI that I wanted to get to, but we are at the end of our time. So I may take that Google Meet meeting and clip it and put it out as an extra podcast or something, because you guys had some really great thoughts on what's happening with AI this year as it relates to marketing and communicating. So maybe we'll look at doing that. But thanks so much for the time that you sacrificed for getting ready for this, and thanks for being with Shop Talk today.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Wes.
Thanks, Wes. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Well, guys, that does it for this Shop Talk. Our next one will be on February 17th. That will be a Tuesday, so not our normal Thursday, second Thursday, but it will be Tuesday, February 17th. So everybody have a fantastic Valentine's Day if I don't see you before then. And as always, if you got any value out of this, please share Shop Talk with your colleagues. You can send them to ShopTalk.Info. You can find all of the previous recordings of previous Shop Talk webinars there, as well as the slide deck as well. And we will have this one up probably within the next 24 hours. So ShopTalk.Info, make sure folks go there to register to receive our invites. All right. Until next month, everybody have a great one.